Thanks for being here today. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions. I'd like to drill down a little bit into the broader spending request of the Smithsonian, in particular, balancing the backlog of maintenance with the 2 new museums that are coming online in the not too distant future. And so as I understand it with the Smithsonian, there is about $2 billion in backlog for maintenance of current facilities. Is that accurate?
That's correct. I think we've done a new program that gives me more assessments, but I think it's a little more than $2 billion.
Inside of that is the Smithsonian request for funding to Congress. It seems that it's only half of the broader recommended range of 2 to 4% of the physical plant's aggregate current replacement value, meaning are we falling further behind on deferred maintenance if we fulfilled the Smithsonian's request?
The plan would be that we want to make sure that we can utilize all the resources you give us. And part of what I'm trying to do now is be more strategic in terms of how we utilize our capital budgets as well as our building maintenance budget. And so therefore, we've done things like when we redone the Air and Space Museum, it's allowed us to reduce our current backlogs. But I think the reality is we need the support that you will give us, and any dollars that you give us, we do use towards building to make sure we handle the backlog as effectively as we can.
But in the funding request, is the amount of funds that's requested sufficient to not fall further behind in the backlog, or do you feel that that's the sufficient amount to not fall behind?
I think it'll help us move forward, but we're going to continue to ask for more moving forward in the future.
Okay, and so the reason I ask, right, is we have the 2 new museums that we're looking to bring online. I think you're uniquely qualified in that role because of your previous work on the African American History Museum. As we look at that, the broader focus here on the strategic planning and your efforts to bring that forward, and whether or not we're prepared to move that forward. Could you give color as to where you're at in the broader strategic planning process for the 2 new museums, in particular, the location of those 2 new museums?
So the challenge with the 2 new museums are that we have to make sure that we get the site selection resolved, because there's very little we can do without the site selection. We have been very successful with fundraising. We've raised over $60 million for each museum already, but that will really only grow once we can point towards here's where these museums would be. Part of what we've done, though, is recognize that we don't want to wait until these museums are up. They may be 10, 12 years away. So we've already begun to do things like more online work to give people that history about women or about the Latino community. We've also created a new Latino exhibition gallery that will allow us to demonstrate to the public, here's the stories we can tell, and get people excited about it. The bottom line is that we are ready to move forward. We're going to need, however, more support to be able to build the staffs for those museums, to be able to make sure that we can get the ultimate decisions about site and ultimately construction. What I will say, though, based on my experience, is that we are able to, as we build the new museums, we're able to get funds that'll pay for construction and HVAC and a lot of things that we normally have to ask Congress for. So it's really a crucial moment in the history of these museums to see where we are going to be over the next year.
In the time that I've led, let me shift topics if I can. I had my nieces and nephews out to D.C. recently. They got to see the pandas before they departed. I can tell you, for our kids, love the pandas. But as we dive in and we think about what's called panda diplomacy, if you will, there's a policy side to this as well. One is, I understand it, the National Zoo paid China $10 million to loan the giant pandas for 10 years. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And then that loan was extended throughout that time, beginning from 2000 all the way through until this year?
We negotiate every year, yes, to extend the loan.
And is there a consideration to extend that if the pandas came back then? Is that an ongoing negotiation?
We would like to have the pandas back, and we would like to negotiate with the Chinese to do just that.
And at any time, has the Smithsonian ever changed or compromised any public content to appease or accommodate China or any other foreign government?
Definitely not.
And do you have policies in place to ensure that would happen during the negotiation?
We do, and then we also make sure that as part of the negotiations, the staff recognizes that this is really about the science and the pandas, and not basically compromise our status in working with the Chinese.
Thank you very much. I now will recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.